My father was in the Air Force, so I grew up on the move. A lot of my early years as a kid, there was definitely like a lot of moments of isolation and kind of having moments to keep myself occupied. And I was also the eldest. I definitely have a lot of memories where it was just kind of just me, kind of just hanging out. I mean, yeah, like mom would be around, but I mean, as far as kind of just keeping myself occupied, drawing was definitely one thing that filled that void, or kind of kept me intrigued, I guess. I used to ask my dad to draw and like interpret certain things, and kind of watching him make marks and create somewhat of an image out of nothing, I think sparked my initial intrigue. In a sense, I would kind of use that as a springboard to try to replicate things that he would draw. There's something that I find fascinating in regards of the, not to sound cheesy or whatever, but like the magic in the mark making, right? Within a couple marks or strokes, it could go from a few lines to a face. What is it about the marks that set off that illusion where it's like automatically you could see something within those few marks and it ends up being something that you could easily resonate with or recognize? Ink is just kind of like a tool to kind of push that exploration. Ink is also a medium that's not really forgiving. Once you lay down the mark, you kind of have to commit. A lot of the marks that are made are pretty bold as well, so it's like it has a certain effect. With painting, there's like a formula or kind of like a ritual involved where there's like a lot of prep and a lot of preparing to create an image, whereas like if I have a brush pen, I could just lay down a few marks and I have something instantly. There's like a conversation that's kind of ongoing as you're working to some degree, like at least in the part of free form art making, where like within painting, like a lot of times I don't really plan out anything. I'm just painting. I just kind of keep working it out until I get to a finished state where I feel like it's right. In a sense, you're directing an illusion of something. And painting itself is just like you trying to work that out, and you're trying to just work through that process. But at the same time, it's like you literally are having a conversation in your head with the piece, because you're just like, oh, there's something that's off about this, or something like portion-wise, like, okay, what do I need to do to fix that? So then you'll try certain things. So there's like all this inner going trial and error. When you see a person painting, it's, very quiet, very like, looks like a labored process, but eternally in their mind, oh, this mark doesn't work, or like, what if I use this color, or like, maybe I need to tone this down. And it's just like this ongoing inner dialogue that happens. That's kind of funny in its own right. I do love seeing other artists' work, aside from being just generally inspired. But I guess like with that conversation I was talking about, like you see the result of that conversation. When I look at a painting, I can't help but break down, oh, I see like they made this mark, or they did this way, because if they did it this way, like it would have resulted in this. Going to a museum, when you're looking at a painting that's like 1800, even though it's whatever 100 years old, you get to chime in on that conversation to some degree, at least see the result of it and kind of interpret like, like kind of what they were going through, which is a very kind of, I don't know, it's just like a really interesting thing that I feel like that's kind of, to some degree, kind of specific to art. You have to go through the experience of painting to understand like how the medium works. When you do see someone else do it, there's just like a lot of information that's there, how the image is created, to like their choice of why they did it, but also what's even possible. And when I look at other artists, like I get to see all the possibilities of what is possible. Anything from like the size and the scale of a painting, the more you inspect it, the more you see. In college, I studied illustration, and I didn't know what an illustrator was. Like I said, I only went that route more so just because I wanted to learn how to paint and just get better technically as far as like image making. I think initially I even came in as like a designer, and then I switched. Illustrators are generally like service providers. For the most part, illustrators are generally hired by a designer to kind of help fulfill like some type of project. And I think the irony was I pursued the route of being an illustrator, but yet the whole point of going to art school was I just wanted to develop and just be a better artist and image maker. I didn't really have in mind to be, I guess, an image service provider. So that was the part that's kind of interesting. Like we find out later, where it's like, oh, okay, well now that you have like these skill sets, like how do you take these abilities and make a living off of it? Time is also like a huge component to any form of creation. I guess kind of thinking back on like my early days of like trying to learn how to draw and develop, the upside in our youth is the abundance of time that we did have, and really explore kind of what's possible, because there wasn't any sense of like pressure to create for anything. You just created for the sake of creating, and you just the joy of creating, right? And as you age and kind of move forward in life, it's interesting. There's like a switch that happens with creation where it was hard for me to try to make sense of, where it's like how is it that we're all exposed and cultivated to be creative and to do art and to make these things, and then all of a sudden people just stop. At least I feel like for me, like that's the part where I'm like, look, how do you just stop? Like I said, if it feels like that curiosity, so I'm just in some level of bliss in the act of like creating whatever I'm working on. And there's enough intrigue there that just kind of keeps me fascinated. And for like the list of projects that I have that I want to accomplish in my lifetime, ultimately there's not enough time. Like I have projects and I have ideas for days. I can only take on one project at a time. And when I think about it, it always comes back to just time. If I have any type of issue or any type of struggle, it always kind of comes back to that. The moment you say you're an artist, what comes to mind is whatever that person has in their mind of what they label as an artist. So automatically you're labeled by their definition of what they think an artist is. So that's the part where it gets kind of tricky the moment because like say for example, like I'm a designer. Okay, well, what does a designer mean to you? And then that's what ultimately you might mean to them, because you're kind of defined by that of their definition of what that is, right? So you end up kind of being pigeonholed to whatever that is. I mean, as an example, I have other interests. I have other things that I enjoy doing, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and list like all these things that I'm interested in. At the end of the day, I'm a human. I'm Dennis Brown, and I'm genuinely happy to be here.